the verb stem. And sometimes the verb stem of the passive form, the aorist passive form, but not always. Usually one with a long vowel in it, means the result of action. And I'll remind you that these are all ko. And they correspond, in most cases, you won't always find a perfect match, at least a testified perfect match, to action nouns, rather than result of action nouns that end in tis. And so there is, in fact, a word matesis, which means learning, right? The act of learning, the action noun. This means the result of learning, right? The lesson. So can you figure out, then, given that pattern, and these are sort of increasing level of phonological difficulty, what the equivalent ma, result of action noun, is for probalo? Firstly, Mikhail, what is probalo going to mean? And you can break it down, just analyze it by part, and give me a literal meaning to begin with.
Put forth.
Okay, to put forth, that's possible. This is what gives us modern Greek vaso, right, to put. And it can be put, it often has a sense of also to throw in Attic Greek. So to put forth, is that pro or pros? Remind me what you're translating there.
I was translating pros.
Yeah, so it's pro in this case. Pro means...
I think it's around.
It's not around, but it's not toward. Mikhail's translation isn't entirely wrong, but I want to make sure that we're clear on the distinction between pro and pros. How would you translate pro?
I am not clear on the distinction between
Pro. No. Pros is toward. Pro is before, in front of. And you can think of it as like the O grade of English pre, right, from Latin. Pre means in front of something. So just think of that as having the O reflex of it, the O grade. So therefore, back to Mikhail, probalo is then to put before or to throw something in front of. So what is the ma noun that comes from this root, from this verb? Any ideas? And I'm giving you examples that have English, that have been borrowed in English, albeit indirectly in many cases. So this, of course, gives us mathematics, for example. Makes sense, of course, but maybe it's not obvious. Samantha, any ideas what the... And there are some slight complexities you're going to deal with because it doesn't use the present tense stem. That's what I'm getting after. You're going to have to figure out sort of what the essential ingredients are there. This is a really useful exercise in maybe recognizing words and then forming new ones. Any ideas, Agenor?
So, believe we get rid of the deduplicated lambdas.
Oh, the duplicated lambdas, yep, good. So you end up with probal.
And then it has an H in there after that. Somehow.
Has an H.
In fact, the H's, what are those officially called?
Well, we don't need to deal with them right now. Let's just hide this off. Let's look at this as our paradigm.
So then, probalema.
Okay, good. So you're sort of using that as an analog, and you end up with probalema. Now, that's not an actual word, but does it maybe look like something does it sound slightly familiar? Sort of work it around on your tongue, a probalema, even though it's not the actual form. The probalema, per favore. Do you have a probalema with that? What is it? Problem. What is it in Greek? Ancient Greek.
I'm assuming it's problema.
Problema. Good. So problema is the result of something having been cast down in front of you. That's a problem. All right. Now here's a slightly more complicated example. Sun istemi. So this is histemi plus sun. Sun, I'll remind you, as a prefix means together. And you'll see it with the dative, used in the same sense as meta plus the genitive, means together with. You also see sun, which is the full form of it. But sun. So literally this would mean standing something up together. Now you're going to have to also do essentially what Agenor did before, figure out how to see what the essential ingredients are, get rid of stuff that belongs to the present tense in particular, that doesn't use the present tense stem. And I'll start again with you. So stuff from the present tense that can go. Let's see, this just specific to the present tense in this formation. Histemi. Samantha.
The me ending.
Okay, the me ending, that's good. So the ending can go, for sure. Anything else go? The hit, right? The reduplicated part of a unit that was now sunste. But, for Stipore, what do we know about nu besides sigma? Can't do it, so which one goes?
I want to say it's the sigma, but I'm not sure.
Well, think about your verb endings that have a lot of this in common. What do you think? The nu, right, it gets lost. It may lead to compensatory lengthening of some sort, like in usi for the third plural ending, which is from onsi. So get rid of that, now you end up with suste. Anyone want to try to figure out what the ma word is? The result of setting something up together. Well, why don't we just stick ma on and see what happens? Stay ma. What is it in English?
Sustain, stamina.
No, easier. System. Problem, system. You're making it more difficult than you need to. Literally read the letters out and see what you can make an English word. Stamina, where's the IN coming from, right? It's, right, stamina's from stamina in Latin anyway. All right, so useful sort of bit of word formation. I do want to read today. The presentation here is pretty short. It's not going back down. Well, let's start from scratch. Because the stuff that I'm going to introduce today is pretty simple. And now you can look out for ma words and then try to figure out, you know, recognize in the first instance what the related verb might be. In some cases, you may actually recognize the verb first. Does anyone have any idea where Alex and Maya are? So,
Do you want the smart ass answer?
I know that I'll get one from you, so what is it? Somewhere?
Maya's probably.
Not here?
I mean, yeah. But I was going to say Maya's probably somewhere on campus.
She's probably asleep.
Probably. To be fair, I wish I was asleep, but I'm not.
That's a constant wish.
It is a constant wish.
You need to work on that.
I'm doing my best.
Because we're in Greece, we're going to be getting up at Odark 30.
Yeah, getting up at Odark 30 isn't a problem.
I'm getting up so dark 30 and be ready to go for 7 or 8 hours ago. All right, so I'm gonna try to keep this short and sweet. This is new stuff, and then I'm going to later in the week go over the non-finite forms of our non-thematic verbs, just to make sure everyone's clear on those. What I'm going to do here is review uses of participles before talking about absolute constructions. You look back in your first textbook about this. There are 3 ways you learned so far about using a participle, but 3 basic ways there are. So you can use them as an attribute. You can use them attributively, which means using them as an adjective, because they are verbal adjectives. So I've given you some examples there, right? So he, Diapolis in this case, this was taken from the chapter at that time, praise for Zeus to preserve everyone, right, traveling to the city. That describes everyone, right? They are traveling. They're traveling people. That's like they're green people or purple people, right? They're traveling people. It's being used as an adjective. You can use a participle as a supplement to a verb to describe the manner in which action is the manner in which the action is being done. So in this case of a supplementary use, you can think of it as an adverbial use rather than an adjectival use. So he orders or bids him not to stop, in parenthesis himself, notice that that's middle, right? Working, right? So he bids him not to stop in what manner, with respect to what? With respect to his working. That's a supplementary use, right? And the person in question here is still auton. He's auton zomenon, and he's requested not to stop, right? Same person is concerned with both the participle and the infinitive there. And he doesn't stop working. He does not stop himself, literally, if you want to translate it a little literally. Pauetai, he stops, because of the verb paue, it would mean he stops something else, like the train coming at him. He stops himself working, right? And here, because he's the subject, ergetzomenos, he doesn't stop working. And then we have circumstantial uses. And these look a lot like your sort of attributive uses, but what they do is they tell you the circumstance of usually somebody else's action with respect to finite form of the verb, right? Another party's action. The circumstances in which an action takes place, right? The backdrop of some activity with respect to a specified finite action with the verb. Hodulos toi despotei epomenos to arkonheri. The slave following the master carries the plow, same person in that case, but ton papon horosin en kepoi ergadzomenon. They see grandpa, what? Working in the garden. So he is working in the garden while they see him. That's the circumstance. So that's in the PowerPoint I'll upload. It's essentially the same thing I gave to you, I think, in week 10 of last semester, so full semester on. Quick review of the basic uses. What I'm going to introduce to you in this PowerPoint is another sort of circumstantial use. It's very simple. In fact, we touched on it when I gave you that separate reading from an old textbook. I just want to remind you that what you do not see, and I always have to qualify this slightly because there are some very odd circumstances which you will see it, particularly with perfect participles, but you've not had them yet, okay? Especially perfect middle passives. But take it as a hard and fast rule. You will not see participles used as a complementary predicate in Greek. That's why, in fact, we don't have periphrastic forms of the perfect. You do not in Greek, any more than you say in French, I am running. Or I am coming, right? You do not use am plus some participle. That's one example of why you can't do that. You don't have a complement like that. So you will not write ho doulos ergadzomenos esti, right? He is a working slave. You will simply say what?
ergonoma's in them.
We want to make it finite, because est is finite. So what will you say instead of this incorrect phrase, literally the slave is working, a working slave? What would you say, Mikhail? You can't say that in modern Greek either, it's not allowed. So doulos. Think it in modern Greek if you want to. If you're going to come up with the same words, just mispronounce it actually one of you. If this is right, doulos works. Samate?
Here got so many.
Has to be finite. There's the word. Ergad, but this is menos. What does that tell you about the underlying the first principle part? It may mean working actively in English, but the participle is middle and form, therefore the first principle part will be not ergazo, but ergazo mai. Therefore, he's here, it works, or is working. Ergads, what's the thematic vowel in this case? Etai, good. Ergadzetai. You see how that works? Because there's one form of the present. You can translate it in English as works in general or is working. But you're not going to see this construction. Right? In modern Greek, odulos, ergazete. Working. Same, would look exactly the same as spelling something without old silly diacriticals, which mean nothing in modern Greek. And pronounced differently. Alright, so no periphrastic imperfective forms, right? Not I was working, I am working. You're not going to ever see that written in good Greek. Maybe in that weird Amorna Akkadian, where they just don't do anything right, but not in good Greek. All right, absolute constructions. This is the new stuff. Now, it is, I'm sure, easiest to understand the grammatical concept of an absolute by starting with the absolute use of the infinitive, right? It's mainly used with verbs of being and speaking to assert circumstances in a clause about, without a finite form of the verb, okay? Now, absolute use of the infinitive is using the infinitive with an article, and we'll talk about the articular at another time. So, to einai means the being, right? The to be. The to be now is just a way of saying at present, and you'll see that in ancient Greek literature. Right? It's an emphatic way of saying now. To nun einai, at present, in contrast to in the past, right? The to be now, literally. Or because we have a gerund in English, we could translate it as a gerund. Being now, the being now, right? So you also have things like, right? Ekon einai, willingly, right? To be willing. Ekon you've actually had, you may not remember it. He's willing. All right, so as to say word, pos epos epein, so to speak. And these are actually ancient Greek terms of the phrase, ou polologoi lege, right? To say with literally much words. But to not say with much words or in much words. It's an instrumental use, by the way, of your dative again. Now, if that doesn't help you understand the concept, you can also think of it simply a peculiar form with circumstantial use of the participle. So, the most common sort you're going to deal with personal verbs, is the so-called genitive absolute. Did you get to the absolute absolute when you're studying Latin?
I don't remember.
I don't recall.
I don't think so.
All right. A sort of circumstantial use of the participle, and it's sometimes accompanied with an infinitive, and it applies to personal verbs. In other words, not the vague "it is raining" kind of verbs, right? or it is necessary, or it seems to me. It's missing H for some reason. All of these participles and anything with which they agree in this clause will be in the genitive case. And this is because the genitive has absorbed the functions of the appelative in Attic Greek, in fact, in most stylistic Greek. So the appelative is literally the from case. Ob in Latin means from. It's really a po in Greek. And so this originated with a sense of from these circumstances, something else emerges. That's why it's in the genitive case. It might seem completely arbitrary, like why am I dealing with circumstantial clause in the genitive? That's the original sense of it, is from these circumstances, out of these circumstances. And if you remember that prepositions that govern the genitive are the ones that have the sense of out of, right? Because the ablative has been absorbed in the genitive, well, that's why they govern the genitive, because the genitive has taken over the functions of your ablative, your from case. So, hat ebe udenos istantos. Notice that no one, udes, and histas, which is a participle, are both in the genitive case. So here, the circumstance of his descending, coming down, right, kata bino, but in the aorist here, is with no one, in the circumstance of no one stopping him. That's one of the senses of histemi, by the way. To make stand is also to stop somebody. So that's one example. Now, there's a concessive example here. Shows you some of the different ways you might translate this, and I'll sort of bullet point these in a moment. Right, so, I do not want to go. Uk etelo el dein. Remember, this is an aorist infinitive, right? I do not want to go in this one circumstance. Not in general, I don't want to go, right? But I don't want to go right now. And the circumstance from which this emerges is him, right, sending me, or sending for me, right? Meta tempomai. We actually had that in that reading about Hippocleides. This Cleisthenes sends for a table, you might remember. All right? Has it sent across, literally, meta. So this is a word, metapempomai, which means to send for somebody, or to act, right, to have something sent across to you. It also, very simply, is in the genitive. Now, the only possible source of confusion here is going to be overthinking this. The simplest way to deal with it is if you have this genitive clause here with a participle. That's going to be one of your big hints. It's a participle in that genitive clause, and I don't see anything else goes with it. Then you should think, I'm not going to try to translate this as some form of the genitive, like the of something, or, made out of something. I'm just going to take it that this is going to be one of these absolute constructions. It's going to describe the circumstances from which, or in which this action takes place. So, in this case, an appropriate, what we call a concessive translation of this is although he keeps sending for me. And why is it concessive? Because you're contrasting the will of the one person versus you're not wanting to go. That's what we mean by concessive clause. You're saying even though and although and words like that are introduced concessive clauses in English, I do not want to go. So here's some generalities about them when you encounter them. This will be the material for the quiz this week. Right? There are various ways to translate this with a simple circumstantial, just like a simple circumstantial participle, right? So, our having no money, right? So, me ekontes arguria, right? Not having any money. You sometimes we'll find it is useful to translate them with when or since. And if it's concessive, although. In this particular case, with is a suitable translation. But the short of it is, you see a clause containing a participle in the genitive case, and you see that something else, like a person, a pronoun, a noun, agrees with it, and you can't see any reason why the genitive is being used to indicate partability or possession, and the participle is going to be your big red flag, then stop, look at it, and see if you can translate it as a participial phrase which talks about the circumstances of the action, and then to tweak the English to make it suitable English. The first thing you might just simply want to try is, no one's seeing him. He descended. In circumstances, no one's seeing him. Easy. It's a very common way of expressing the circumstances. Right? Sending, him sending for me, or sending with implicit for me, I don't want to go. So just use it to express the circumstances. Now, the genitive absolute with these personal verbs, right, because these both are attached to persons, discrete persons of some sort, singular or plural, is the most common form in Attic Greek. When you read Herodotus, you'll find that Herodotus is really fond of dative ones. It's truly, I think, totally understudied. He has dative absolutes all the time. They're actually called dative locative absolutes because he means in the circumstances, literally, that this happened. But we'll stick with the thing you're most likely to see, and that's the genitive absolute form. Now, were it that easy? Okay? Because in Latin, the equivalent's called an ablative absolute, because they still have the ablative case in Latin. But ancient Greek, focusing on Attic in particular, has a different form of circumstantial construction, an absolute construction, that is used with impersonal verbs. And frankly, this is one visually is going to be a little bit trickier to see, because the genitive endings are often really easy to pull out, especially if they're like second declension. And of course, if they're plural, they're always on, right? But in this case, what you do is you use a participle in the accusative case, and it's invariably going to be neuter, the thing, the impersonal thing. So, tunkano means to encounter something. This is the aorist participle, active. Tukon, right? Literally happening, means by chance. Literally, it having happened. Because you'll see these used in absolute construction. You've had exami, right? XSD. It is possible, one of your impersonal verbs. Here is your present active participle. Humos exon. It was possible, always with the accusative, for us to speak. And here, when might be an appropriate way of translating it. But the simplest way of translating this as an absolute construction is to remember to translate this participle. It being possible for us to speak. It's the accusative case here. From day, right, one ought to do something. Right, so we have hoi, they, referring in this case to change of subject. Not helping, aorist, right? When they should, right? In other words, it being obligatory, if you will, it being necessary, translated as a participial phrase, it being necessary. Not helping when it is necessary, it being necessary, have still come away, safe and sound, healthy, eudies. I think the reason why this is going to be the most difficult to recognize is because you're going to look at on, you're going to think it must be some sort of second declension neuter. You're just going to have to remember that very often these participial endings in the neuter are either going to be on or on, but all the impersonal verbs you've learned so far are thematic, so that's always going to be on. I wish I could make it more obvious why you should do that. And it's one of these circumstances where I can't think of anything to say except that's the way it's done. Absolute constructions, we have them in English, though they can be very awkward in English. But it's a circumstantial use of the participle. Personal verbs, genitive, and everything agreeing with it. And will be translated as the circumstances in which this happened. Still used especially in literary modern Greek. Right? You frequently see in newspapers denomenon, it's perfect participle, which literally means it having been given, granted that. Right? And it's in the genitive plural. And then just various things will follow from it. Denomenon ton iogonoton, you hear in modern Greek. Given the facts, right? The circumstances in which something's going to happen. And with impersonal verbs, it's going to be the accusative. And I dare say invariably going to be in the neuter singular. Because it's the it, right? It seems, it's obligatory, it's necessary, it's whatever it might be. It's impersonal, yeah.
I'm struggling with the accusative absolute to wrap my head. The genitive one makes sense. I get that. I just don't understand.
Why is it accusative?
And when is it used?
Impersonal verbs.
So
only impersonal verbs. That's the only distinction. It's not like you have to learn, it's a single concept, the only distinction between personal verbs, like you or I or they or he or whoever's doing this, right? If it's a person, you can think of like that one, that person, right? That's when you're going to use the genitive absolute. If it's one of those impersonal verbs, and we have them in English, we often use them for things like weather circumstances. The it's raining, right? But even things like it's necessary, or like what's necessary, it. And you're sort of hard pressed to talk about what it is. What you mean is, ultimately, what do you mean when you say it? What we're actually saying is the circumstances dictate. So that's the it in question. So impersonal verbs are the accusative. If you want to know the syntactical explanation, it's because, for whatever reason, the ancient Greeks thought of, when personal verbs, talking about from these circumstances with personal verbs, but with impersonal verbs, they were thinking of the accusative of respect, such as we have, which basically underlies a lot of our adverbial forms. The accusative of respect means with respect to the following. You put it in the accusative. That's what a lot of the temporal adverbs you've had already are, essentially. They're neuter singular form. Proton, you translate as first or firstly, but the underlying sense there is with respect to the first neuter singular thing. Likewise, telos, right? Telos by itself is protelos, the end. But when you see it used adverbially, what the underlying sense of it is with respect to the end. In other words, finally. So, for whatever reason, they thought impersonal verbs should take an accusative of respect. Does that clarify a little bit?
yes.
Yeah. I think the trick is not so much translating them. You've had circumstantial use of the participles before. The trick is going to be identifying them. So when all else fails, just realize these things are going to jump up on you, and they're not always don't have an English equivalent. So we just use a basic use of the participles, right? Glos being a really big fortress, we should expect it to have lots of land around it, something of the sort, farmland.
And do we see the genitive absolute in plural as well?
Yes, we do.
Okay, but not the accusative absolute, so it's always singular.
Yes, always singular because it's the it.
Not the,
I can't think of any exceptions to the rule of that, actually, because it's always the indefinite it, meaning the circumstance in question.
because I guess if it's an indefinite they, it's a.
Yeah, I mean we don't always say it is raining in English. It was kind of odd to say they are raining. It's just there's no plural about it. It's just it's the thing. The thing is doing the thing. So, all right, let's 5 minutes. Let's do ourselves right for some reading.
Same place.
Same place. Yep. All right. So, Mikhail, take it away. Let's just stick to the translation right now. So we had, it seemed right to Decapolis to go straight to the Asclepiaeon, isn't it? Yeetus. You'll learn to say that in Greek when you're there. Little house. Right, that's what you say when people sneeze. Okay, so Uga.